Yeah. I mean, that's kind of those are more the guys the NFL needs. You can't have that. You can't have a guy like Deshaun Watson missing out.
Right. All right, guys.
Yeah. Well,
And...
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Experience Hockey Talk, Serious Hockey Talk for serious hockey fans. And today is Saturday, November 4th, 2017. The Caps are coming off of a really good win against the New York Islanders and are playing the Boston Bruins today in Boston. And we had history made last Saturday in the National Women's Hockey League as well, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And also a little bit later on, we'll be having George Foussekis from NovaCaps on to talk about the Capitals and the Vancouver Canucks and amongst other topics as well. And also, Bernie, I know you have some stuff that you're talking about before we went on air. Also, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to go to patreon.com/TXHT_hockey. We have an amazing interview with Ted Starkey, the author of Red Rising and Chasing the Dream, and also covers the NHL, sees a lot of Islanders and Capitals. Really great interview. We actually went to an hour and a half for that interview. So, Bernie, take it away.
well, public service announcement from your friends here at TXHT. Turn your clocks back an hour tonight.
Yes, definitely.
So,
especially if any of my teammates on the Street Sharks is watching this.
except for those on the Street Sharks, I'd rather you guys be an hour late.
If you guys on the Street Sharks do not change your clocks, Gwendolyn Knights, I don't care if you guys forget to do your clocks.
Webster's Dictionary would clarify that as a forfeit.
Exactly.
So, lots of news and notes. We're in November, which means we are in Movember, which you'll see some very funky-looking mustaches and beards, and we got a big head start on that, I think. But it's all to
shaving.
It's all to raise awareness for men's health, I mean, you hear a lot about testicular cancer as well as other forms of cancer, and I think we'll cover that a little later in our news and notes segment near the end of the show regarding one of the best referees to lace up the skates in the National Hockey League, especially the best hair of any of them before they all started wearing helmets in the league. But and also Hockey Fights Cancer Month. It started at the Capital One Arena on Thursday night. We'll cover that when we talk about the Islander game, as well as tonight they're going to be in Ottawa, Arizona, and Florida. Last night was very touching in Edmonton. They actually had Brian Boyle come out to take the opening face-off with Connor McDavid, with the two cancer patients, and it was really a touching moment at the Rogers Place in Edmonton. So I know George's Canucks will be doing it on Monday night, so we'll talk to George a little bit about that. NovaCaps always cranking out that top-notch content that you can only get on NovaCaps.com. So,
Yep.
we are, I think we're starting to, first off, I think we put the bow on the Western Canadian trip.
Yes.
With the Washington Capitals starting in Edmonton on Saturday night.
Yeah, and the Capitals were very impressive. They had to call up Anthony DePaluso real quick for the trip because of the injury to Brett Connolly. He plugged into the fourth line with Jay Beagle and Alex Chason. First line, you had Alex Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov, and Devontae Smith-Pelly. And I have to say, I actually like Smith-Pelly with Ovechkin and Kuznetsov a lot better than Vrana. There's just something about Smith-Pelly where he knows he's not going to be like that big goal scorer. He doesn't have the greatest, or he has good hands, but he's going to be somebody who can get around the net, create a little chaos, and kind of like what Tom Wilson can also do.
Well, we've also mentioned with DSP or with even an Oshie with Kuznetsov, Kuzi, and if you have Ovi and Kuzi on the same line, that third person on the line needs to be your workhorse, your grunt, your guy that goes to the net looking for loose change, but more importantly, being also very defensively responsible, playing a 200-foot game. Devontae Smith-Pelly, former first-round pick of the Anaheim Ducks, definitely has woven his game through playing with Anaheim, especially his last stop in New Jersey, getting more of a defensive role, being able to play that two-way style and being able to know which role he needs to play. And you know he's going to get his opportunities playing with two of the most explosive players in the world when it comes to offense. But definitely a nice tweak of the lines. But I don't understand why you call up an Anthony Peluso and play him a grand total of 9 minutes in 2 games. A lot of little things that are starting to bother me about way Barry Trotz is tinkering with making this roster work for him, especially with his lines and the amount of time certain guys are playing. But we'll cover that later.
Yeah, and real quick to the Facebook groups that I'm sharing in, I think I double posted in one. I apologize. It's trying to talk and share the greatness of this show. I do apologize for that. But no, Anthony Peluso, I kind of figured he wasn't going to get a lot of playing time. He was like that emergency call-up because of Conley getting injured, and they just needed somebody to get into the lineup real quick. It wasn't a good start for the Capitals in the game, though. Especially the fact when said Anthony Peluso takes an interference penalty in the first 6 minutes of the game. At 12:16, Patrick Maroon scored his 4th of the season from Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And then Anthony Peluso would take a delay of game penalty along with Patrick Maroon at 13:11. So that's 2 penalties right there for Anthony Peluso, first game in. And then 17:55, Adam Larsson would score his 2nd of the season for Edmonton to give him a 2-0 lead. But with 18 seconds left in the period, Devontae Smith-Pelly would score his first as a Washington Capital from John Carlson and Alex Ovechkin. Which would then turn the tide for the Washington Capitals, because in the second period, Lars Eller would score his first of the season at 10:32 of the second period, assisted by Madison Bowie and Alex Ovechkin. And then he would also take a delay of game penalty at 14:10. And then in the third period, you had Evgeny Kuznetsov score 30 seconds into the period, assisted by Alex Ovechkin. Then Eller would take another penalty for delay of game at 5:25. And then Kuznetsov would score his 3rd of the season, 2nd of the game at 15:56, which would go unassisted. And then Eller would take another penalty. Stop taking penalties, Lars Eller.
Well, as we'll get into later in the week, Lars has finally figured out that 4x6 is very friendly if you put the puck on the net. Him and Burakovsky had a lot of trouble hitting the frame, but going back to Peluso, is you have a guy like Nathan Walker, who we've lauded about immensely ever since training camp, about being that spark plug on the 4th line. A guy can bring speed, give you 10 to 12 quality minutes. You saw that on Thursday night against the Islanders. I mean, he just goes in there, he burrows out pucks, and he's just a constant stream of energy for that 45 to 50 seconds on ice. I mean, I understand bringing up a Peluso, but you didn't really need to put him in the lineup, especially when you're playing on very fast tracks like Edmonton and Calgary, playing teams that have that speed game. It would have behooved them to play Nathan Walker and balance out the minutes a little more. And you might not have had 2 penalties in the first 12 minutes of the game against one guy.
Yeah, and then of course Jay Beagle would get the empty net goal, his 2nd of the season, assisted by Lars Eller, to ice the game. 5-2 victory for the Washington Capitals. So they go down 2-0. They get 5 unanswered. Kuznetsov with like the sick wizardry goal in the game. Interesting note, Caps were outshot 40-31 by the Edmonton Oilers. Faceoffs were 37-24 in favor of Edmonton. Hits were even at 26 apiece, and the Capitals did not have a power play.
Yeah, Ovechkin 3 quality assists, and I almost thought he had a 4th one on the one Kuzi got the unassisted goal, which the one you're alluding to.
They originally had it as Taylor Chorney.
Yeah. But you saw the replay. Kuzi was the one that intercepted it and did the whole thing himself. So,
yeah.
But it's good to see Kuzi finally hitting the net. It's starting to see some of these other guys denting the twine instead of just being along for the ride, passing the puck. I mean, you don't see Ovechkin scoring at the rate he was scoring at the first week and a half of the season, but you knew that was going to happen. But to see him adding to his game with the assists, getting himself on the forecheck. You start seeing other little parts of Alex Ovechkin's game that makes him more of a well-rounded player.
Oh yeah, and then of course you have the game in Calgary the very next night. Nothing really happened in the first period. 2 penalties by the Calgary Flames. Then in the second period at 2:08, Michael Furlan would score his third of the season from Brett Kulak and Johnny Gaudreau. Then in the third period, Jacob Vrana would score 4:19 into the third period, his third of the season from TJ Oshie. But then at 9:09, Sean Monahan would score his sixth of the season, assisted by Johnny Gaudreau. And then the Capitals would take 2 penalties near the end in this later half of the period, and Caps would lose 2-1. Honestly, watching this game, I really think that this was just a game where the Caps ran out of gas, and that's what it looked like. It looked like a team that, while still trying to do all the right things, they just ran out of gas.
Well, you're playing back-to-back nights. There's no reason that John Carlson plays 29 minutes against Edmonton and 27 minutes against Calgary. There's really no reason why Brooks Orpik is playing 27 minutes. He played, I think, 8.5 minutes in the first period against Edmonton, and there was no penalty kills. There's no reason. Back-to-back nights, you should be managing the minutes. Bowie and Jews and Chorney should be getting at least 15 to 18 minutes. I mean, I understand if there's a lot of penalties, power plays, or penalty kills, that the minutes are going to get skewed. But if you're playing 5-on-5 for practically the whole period, there's no reason why Brooks Orpik should be getting 8.5 minutes in the first period. None. You saw in the Calgary goal, on the Calgary game, the first goal was a turnover, and Orpik and Carlson got lost. I mean, they're playing together for the most part, and then the second goal, right before the second goal, Carlson jumps up erroneously. It leads to a 4-on-1 where Philip Grubauer, who played an exceptional game in my eyes. He's had 2 really good games and not gotten a result out of it in Tampa and then Sunday night in Calgary. And it's a matter of just cleaning up the errors. I mean, I know John Carlson can be a workhorse, but at times when he's playing these 27, 28, 29 minutes, the mistakes he makes, sometimes there are very few mistakes he makes during a game, but when he does make them, they are gigantic in the momentum shift of a game, or it leads directly to a goal. So, I mean, he does a lot offensively, but defensively, at times, that little mistake can be blown into a massive sinkhole for the Caps' results.
Yes, and I'm pulling up notes for what we talk about in a later segment right now. But yeah, no, and actually, and going into this Islanders game, which the Caps needed, and actually, for those who listened to the interview with Ted Starkey, he said that this Islanders game is actually the game that really dictates what really happens with the Washington Capitals throughout the rest of the season. This was the test game for them. If they lose to the Islanders, we could be in for a very long season. But if they're able to fight and scrap and get the win, this could be a pretty good season for the Washington Capitals. And of course, the Washington Capitals would come out and win. Taylor Chorney scoring his first of the season at 5:55 into the first period, assisted by Chandler Stevenson and Lars Eller. Yeah, wow, that's like, what, 3 points, 4 points now in 3 games? Yeah.
Keep going. It gets better for Lars Eller that night.
Yeah, and then on the power play, on a Brooks Orpik slashing call, at 13:01, John Tavares would score his 12th of the season from Josh Bailey and Anders Lee. Then at 16:19, Lars Eller would score his second of the season, assisted by Chandler Stevenson and Madison Bowie. And then Casey Foussekis would be called for hooking to end the period. In the second period, it was a very penalty-filled period. However, it would be a bench minor to the Capitals for too many men on the ice, where at 16:18, Anders Lee would score on the power play his 7th of the season from Josh Bailey and Matthew Barzal. And then Alex Chiasson would score at 16:30, his first as a Washington Capital from John Carlson and Jay Beagle. Then in the third period, Anders Lee would score at the 7-minute mark of the third, his 8th of the season from Thomas Hickey and John Tavares. And then Lars Eller would get his 3rd of the season at 16:39 from Tom Wilson and John Carlson to win the game 4-3. Interesting note, shots were 38-19 New York Islanders, Faceoffs were Capitals 32-20. Hits were 12-10 in favor of the Islanders. Power play was 2 for 4 for the Islanders and 0 for 4 for the Caps. The Capitals were outshot 16-2 in the third period. It only took one.
Two little negatives, and then I also want to accentuate some positives. The little negatives, first of all, how can one of the few benches in the National Hockey League with 4 coaches on it, yet this team constantly takes bench minors for too many men on the ice? It's driving me up a wall. I mean, I've been saying it. Forsythe needs to be moved up into the press box or something. You have too many coaches on that bench, especially with the power play struggling and the penalty kill struggling. The special teams aren't very special right now. Something needs to change. The slingshot entries coming in the zone just slows everything up. John Carlson practically plodding up the ice when he's bringing up the puck on the power play. Put a Dmitry Orlov. Put someone that's going to put a little more pep in their step, bringing up the puck on the ice on the first power play. Maybe you have to split up Backstrom and Kuznetsov. I really thought they had a really good magic together in the playoffs, like we've said in countless weeks. They're the only 2 power play goals they scored against the Penguins in the playoffs was when Kuzi and Backstrom were on the ice together. I mean, Burakovsky coming back will definitely help that, but that ain't going to happen until almost Christmas time. So we got to get through with what I got through. The other little bugaboo is with this whole righty-lefty thing. You know, that drives me up a wall with the face-offs. TJ, when did Nicholas Backstrom stop taking face-offs on the power play and the penalty kill? TJ Oshie's taking way too many draws in my eyes. I mean, he played a little center at North Dakota, but he's mainly a wing. He's taking the draw to start that penalty kill, which lasted all of 6 seconds in the first period, leading to the Islanders tying the game at 1, with Tavares' 12th of the season or 13th. He's scoring a lot of goals. That's all we know for that. But Nicholas Backstrom should be taking any draw. I don't care righty, lefty, and all that. The lefty can draw the puck into the corner just as easy as a righty can. This all started with Dale Hunter doing the Jay Beagle and Matt Hendrickson, which worked because they played on the same line, and he practically would put him out there every shift in the defensive end in the playoffs. But positives, on the game-winning goal, Tom Wilson, what a tremendous play at center ice. So that little chip pass, which led Eller to get that 2-on-1. Madison Bowie I think has some of the best offensive instincts from the blue line early in the season from the Capitals blue liner. Again, making some plays happen, driving the net, staying down low, and it's amazing when you get some net front presence. Taylor Chorney's goal, Tom Wilson right in front of the net. That's why the power play is struggling so mightily at times. There's no net front presence. Even when Marcus Johansson was here, they praised Marcus for getting to the net. He would stand to the side of the net. I want to see someone put their rear end in front of the goaltender.
Yeah.
Block the view. We've mentioned it. Both of us mentioned it. That extra split fraction of a second is just enough time for Carlson to get that puck over to Ovi for the one-timer, and that goalie not getting over just in time between hitting him in the shoulder and hitting the top part of the net. So little things like that. But like I said, little things make this whole game worthwhile, and I really liked the fight of the Capitals. After the first Islander goal, after second Islander goal, coming right back and getting the lead with the Eller goal, and then especially Alex Chason 12 seconds after the Islanders tied it at 2, coming right down that wing and blasting it 7-hole on Yaroslav Halak, who was very leaky that night.
All right, and real quick, just want to do a quick shout out to Stacy Jordan from Real Husbands of Largo, a show you can listen here on the WBGR network, and of course to our good friend Shaggy, who is joining the Street Sharks next season. But with that, we'll be right back from the break. When we come back, we'll be joined by George Foussekis of Nova Caps.
What the foos?
Looking for some pre-Thanksgiving fun, then look no further than to DerpyCon. DerpyCon, which is taking place at the Hyatt Regency Morristown in Morristown, New Jersey from November 17th to 19th. Come see special guests like David Yost, Walter Jones, Todd Havercorn, and so many more. For more information and to purchase tickets, visit derpycon.com today. Hey, George.
Hey, what's up?
Not much. We're in commercial break right now. We'll be back in about a minute 30 seconds.
Number one. Alright, sounds good.
Attention hockey fans, the Experience Hockey Talk is on Patreon. Come join the Txht community today for access to exclusive episodes, interviews, and so much more. You can join the TXHT Patreon community at patreon.com/TXHT_hockey.
_hockey.
Hooray, hockey. All right, and ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Experience Hockey Talk, Serious Hockey Talk for serious hockey fans. And real quick, we want to do a quick shout out to the bands Eye Shine and Crimson Orchid for the music that you hear before and during the show. And also a quick shout out to Robbie Gross from Sports on the Hill podcast for having me on this past Monday to talk about the Capitals and how the season's been for them, especially with the adversity that they're facing right now. And of course, Bernie, you're always calling into Sports on the Hill, not just about the Caps, but all other things as well.
Robbie and Carol do a fantastic job, and hopefully we'll have Robbie on future episodes here on TXHT. Always good to be able to spread the news of the great state of the union called the National Hockey League and All Points Hockey. And that leads us to our one of our regular guests here from Nova Caps, and I think he got bumped down to number 2 on all-time famous people to graduate from Old Dominion University. Sorry, but I think Justin Verlander's World Series ring and wedding ring has definitely jumped George Foussekis of Nova Caps. George, how you doing this morning?
Michael and Bernie, how are y'all doing? It's good to be back.
So you're number 2 on Old Dominion's list now. You've bumped down from number 1, but I think Justin Verlander kind of earned it.
Yeah, that was just a great World Series. Very fun to watch, especially the last couple games. It was outstanding baseball.
Yeah. Now, last week we talked about it, and we knew that we were having you on, so we want to go back to the very beginning of the Caps' Western Canadian trip, which was against the Vancouver Canucks, which the Canucks blew out the Washington Capitals. What were some major things that you noticed, not just on the Capitals side of things, because we knew that they were going to be facing adversity this season, but the massive changes that have happened with Vancouver as well?
Well, on the Capitals side, obviously they're missing Matt Niskanen in that game, and Nicholas Backstrom was ill for that game too, and that definitely was a huge blow to the lineup. Not to take anything away from the Capitals, but just the Capitals just they were just going through the motions that game and really didn't start going to the third period. And honestly, the Canucks took advantage of it, and the Canucks just kind of played simple hockey, especially with the man advantage that, Brock Besser got a shot through and was getting shots through, and Bo Horvat and Sven Baertschi were making plays right near the net, right near the blue paint, and that was kind of the difference in the game, and the Canucks took advantage and pretty much kept their foot on the gas the rest of the way, and that's something the Capitals, I've noticed, they haven't been able to do. They need to, try to get started early and try to, get a lead. And that's one thing I think the Capitals need to work on in upcoming games.
Yeah, I noticed that. I mean, Vancouver was on a little bit of a roll coming into that game. Hadn't won 3 straight, and that upped their win streak to 4 before just hitting the skids the last couple games. A couple low-scoring affairs. I think it was 2-1 to Dallas and 2-0 to New Jersey. you can see, I think you mentioned it in the preseason, George, about how this next wave of Vancouver offensive talent is going to start taking more of a major role. You mentioned Besser, you mentioned Berchi, you mentioned Horvat. They're three of the top four scorers on the team right now. Travis Green, the impact that he has had behind the bench, can you see this going forward as being more of an upswing, especially with that topsy-turvy Pacific Division looking now with Vegas coming back down to earth and the Kings' resurgence?
Absolutely. I mean, the Canucks, honestly, against New Jersey especially, they played some of their best hockey so far this season. Even in a loss, they threw about 37 shots against Corey Schneider, and of course, Corey Schneider did what he does best, and he pretty much stole the show in that game. Even in some of their losses, the Canucks, you can say, have looked good, even though they didn't get the intended result. And what Travis is doing well at is he's still putting the young guys in positions to where they can succeed, and the team is really buying in, and even the veterans are buying into it too with their reduction of minutes. They're buying into the youth movement and the enthusiasm that these guys are bringing to the lineup every night.
Right. Now, shifting back over to the Capitals, what were some other things that you noticed about the Caps so far this season? Obviously, you mentioned Matt Niskanen's out due to injury. He probably won't be back till around Christmas. Andrei Burakovsky's out due to a fractured thumb. He had to have surgery on. He'll probably be back around Christmas as well. And then you have Brett Connolly and Tyler Graovac both out with, Connolly, I believe, might be a concussion. Or no, it is a concussion. They did confirm that. And Graovac might be a shoulder injury. What are you noticing with these Caps so far, especially with the quick amount of adversity that they're having to face? I believe one of the headlines that Nova Caps had put out yesterday was the Caps are fighting for survival right now.
Well, the Caps, obviously the turnover from last year is already starting to show, and they have a lot of new players this year. They're still learning, still adapting to new roles, and you have some of the, it's put more pressure on some of the veteran players, like you mentioned before, Brooks Orpik, who's had to play more minutes because of the changes to the lineup this year. So I think the Caps are still kind of in that they're still kind of in that adjustment period early on, and Barry Trotz is still trying to manage the minutes and make sure that certain guys are not put in certain situations that they're not comfortable with. So the main difference right now for the Capitals, the biggest thing that I see for them that's haunting them right now is obviously their special teams. The penalty kill is atrocious. It's not been very good, and they were one of the top teams in the league last year in that department. And the power play has been it's been a little rough, but not as good as it has been in the past. And the Caps just need to simplify things moving forward, and they need to really just try to figure out ways to improve their special teams. And I think that'll take them a long way.
Now, I want to intertwine the two comments. One you had about Travis Green and one about Barry Trotz, about Travis Green having the wherewithal to have faith in these young guys playing important minutes. And it goes back with you talking about how the special teams have been sluggish. The possibility of playing Carlson and Orpik too many minutes at the expense of getting these young guys like Madison Bowie and Christian Djoos in more meaningful minutes could be hurting the special teams, because Carlson's usually in that first power play unit, and Carlson and Orpik, I saw Orpik played a full 2 minutes on a penalty kill against the Islanders the other night. Could that be attributing to part of the struggles with these special teams, seeing that how Barry Trotz at times isn't as adept at giving the young guys a chance to play those important minutes? You saw it in Nashville with Philip Forsberg before Laviolette came down, practically saved his young fledgling career, and now you see him blossoming.
Absolutely. I feel that Barry Trotz maybe needs to open up a little bit more and experiment with a few more things. Like, honestly, one change that he probably could make and get away with it is he could actually put a guy like Christian Djoos or Madison Bowie out on the power play, and that would help John Carlson not eat up as many minutes as he does every night. And that's one minor detail that I think that they could go with, and they could probably get away with it, and it'd probably be fine. Another area I would, adjust with the power play too is maybe get somebody like Tom Wilson in front of the net instead of putting Kuznetsov out there with Backstrom. Well, just have Backstrom out there and put Tom Wilson out there, and he can get in front of the net and set the screens like you were mentioning earlier. So I feel that there's some adjustments that Barry Trotz could experiment with somewhere down the line here, and he could probably get away with making these few adjustments for the betterment of the team.
I think the three of us are sounding like broken records because we've been talking about it for months about putting Tom Wilson on the power play in front of the net forever, because that's what they should be doing, because it's a big body. He is capable of scoring goals, as we saw in the playoffs, and he can get those garbage goals, especially the type that Justin Williams was always getting on the power play last season for the Washington Capitals.
But also, you say, Mike, and George, you said this too, Barry Trotz has come out and constantly said, I want to get Tom Wilson more minutes. I want to get Tom Wilson more chances to score goals.
I want Tom Wilson to score double digits.
Where else could that be more prevalent than putting his rear end on the power play?
Yep.
Thank you. Amen. Hallelujah. Dixon just blessed us all.
But I actually, real quick, George, I actually have the Metropolitan Division standings in front of me. Right now you have New Jersey with 18 points along with Columbus and Pittsburgh. They are 5 points ahead of the Washington Capitals. Obviously, by the Capitals being the Islanders, they did a huge favor for themselves. They're only 2 points behind both Philadelphia and the Islanders. If the Capitals win tonight against Boston, they then have 15 points. If the Islanders and Flyers lose, the Capitals would actually jump to the first wild card spot in the Eastern Conference, but would also jump to 4th place in the Metropolitan Division. So that kind of gives you an idea of how close this division really is. And even though the Capitals are 6-1 after 13 games and have 13 points, they're still in this, despite all the adversity that they're facing right now, and that's a major positive for them. How do you view that, knowing that the Caps are 5 points out from essentially first place, because it's a 3-way tie between Jersey, Columbus, and Pittsburgh, but then they're 2 points out from a wild card spot at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Caps are definitely still in second now. And honestly, no one has really pulled away with the Metropolitan Division yet, so the Caps are still right there. The main thing that I'm noticing for the Capitals coming up too, especially in the month of November, is that they have a lot of home games. I believe that 9 out of their 14 games in the month of November are at home, and that is big for the Capitals because they've always historically played well in front of the fans in DC. So, and they have a couple of games like you mentioned, Boston coming up, and I believe they've got Arizona, Buffalo coming up. These are winnable games. And these are games that the Caps need to win in order for them to jump up, at least in the wild card for right now, and maybe even into the top 3 picture in the Metro.
Well, and also you mentioned the schedule, George. And I think they only have 2 back-to-backs in the month of November. Usually when this team starts cooking on all cylinders is when they play every other night. Braden Holtby starts to get in a groove, and then everyone else starts to fall in place. Could also, granted, you have 68 games left, so, everything's good, but always there's that barometer of Thanksgiving being where these teams are. If a team is like 8 to 10 points off the playoff pace, usually they don't find a way to get back in, but a lot of teams that are usually in that mix around Thanksgiving time, that's when things start to slot themselves somewhat, but could it almost be a blessing in disguise that Matt Niskanen is out for the period of time he is this early in the season, not only just to give Madison Balley and Christian Hughes good ice time, but also having him more rested as the season starts picking up, because really a lot of these Metro teams haven't really played each other yet, and there's going to be a lot of 4-point games starting. Obviously, the Penguins coming up next this coming week, but also after Thanksgiving, where the Metro versus Metro division teams start playing each other a little more.
Real quick, yeah. George, before you answer, the Caps last month had only 3 Metro Division games. And if I remember right, my dad mentioned that, and I think you mentioned this also. The Flyers only play one divisional game until January.
It was one division game in 39, and that was the Capitals game on their home opener.
Yeah. So go ahead, George.
Yes, obviously, you know, that guy like Matt Niskanen, you definitely want him around especially for your divisional games, because these games are so important in the standings, and they have, you know, the point swings are much bigger versus your division versus the out of conference games. So these points are very important, and it's definitely important for the Caps to rest Matt Niskanen for however long he needs to rest, and to not rush him back at any point. They really need to give their young guys some experience, but also rest their veterans that need it. And I believe that the Caps will be able to get that done.
All right. Well, real quick tonight, the Washington Capitals take on the Boston Bruins in Boston at 7 p.m. Then on Monday night, the Capitals take on the Arizona Coyotes, who are like 1-11-1 right now.
Something like that.
Which, you know, we can go on an hour-long tangent about what is really wrong with that team, but we're not going to right now. And then Tuesday, they play Buffalo in Buffalo at 7 p.m. And then Friday night, the Capitals play their 5th divisional game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So we'll have some interesting stuff to talk about next Saturday on the show. You look at this schedule: Boston, Arizona, Buffalo, Pittsburgh. You look at those 4 games, that's 8 points right there. How many points should the Capitals get out of this 4-game stretch right here?
I believe that they need to get at least 6. I think that 6 points is definitely an obtainable goal, and I feel that if they want to keep pace in the Metropolitan Division, they need to come away with these games. And beating Pittsburgh especially would just be the icing on the cake, since the Caps didn't get the result that they wanted to the last time against them. So I feel that 6 points is definitely an achievable goal, and the Caps definitely need to, you know, buckle down here, and they need to go out there and beat these teams, especially the Arizonas of the world, that they probably should beat at this point.
Yeah, well, you know, and like our friend Shaggy just posted, said that the Yotes are this bad this year, especially since they have a good young core. Well, when you base everything off of analytics, this is what happens. That's why the Florida Panthers have turned it around, because Dave Talon took over again and is getting the team back on track down in Florida. Bernie, you have any?
Well, I mean, also Bob Bugner bringing up more of an up-tempo game with all that young talent down in Florida. Real quick, George, I know we mentioned just at the opening of the show, November is Hockey Fights Cancer Month. I know the Vancouver Canucks are doing their thing on Monday night. I don't know if you saw the thing last night in Edmonton with Connor McDavid and Brian Boyle. That definitely brings a little verklemtness to your throat. Any thoughts about Hockey Fights Cancer? Anything? I mean, I know I've been affected directly with my father passing away over 30 years ago due to form of leukemia. Anything with Hockey Fights Cancer that might affect you? Been affected with you, George?
It's definitely an important time to recognize the people that have been through it. I know it's very difficult for many people. Honestly, anything that people can donate goes a long way, and I feel that these people should always be remembered and in our hearts, and there's a very special place in the hockey community for these wonderful people. So definitely get out and donate and try to help out. It's really a wonderful thing.
One thing I really wish the NHL would do is make those jerseys more available to everybody. And they especially allow the gear, because some of the gear is just really a one and done sometimes, and I'd like to see that a lot more available.
I'll go one further, Michael. I'd like to see, I mean, I know they like promoting there. I'd like to see them wear the Hockey Fights Cancer purple, the home team wear the purple jerseys for the game, and then have it auctioned off after the game. People love they put a lot of money into the auctions for that, but if they're game worn jerseys, how much more money we'd be raising to take this god awful disease off of this earth. I think it would just be a huge moneymaker. How do you feel about that one, George?
Yes, I agree. That would definitely be a wonderful idea. I definitely agree with that. The NHL can definitely use this to bring more support to the cause and everything. I definitely think, Bernie, I agree. That would definitely be a great idea for the NHL to do someday.
All right. Now, George, you were mentioning something to me, and I posted that I'm interested on Facebook for this event. You guys got something coming up soon?
Yes. NovaCast on November 25th. We are hosting a lunch party event at Laxton Ameripub, which is in Maryville, Virginia. It's for a great cause. We've just recently partnered with the USA Warriors ice hockey team. They're a wonderful group of people. It's a charitable. It's going to be partially a charitable event too, and there's going to be a raffle going on. We have autographs, sticks, pucks, you name it. It's for a wonderful cause, for a wonderful group of people. Please come out and support us in our wonderful cause that we're going to have, and come watch the Caps take on the Maple Leafs that night. So please come out and support. For more information, you can always go to our website, novacast.com. You can also find the event listed under our events page on our Facebook page. So it's definitely a wonderful event, and you can meet so many wonderful people.
Well, definitely NovaCaps, John and Julie and Harrison, Michael, yourself, whole bunch of everyone does a fantastic job in there, and hopefully a lot of people will come out to this great event and watch the Capitals and most likely Philip Grubauer in goal, being that the traditional back-to-back after Thanksgiving game, unless Gruby plays the Lightning on the day before. So and rake up some Leafs and get 2 points. So awesome stuff, George.
All right, and real quick before we do the official send-off with George, our good friend Donald Gankenheimer sent a message saying the American Cancer Society is one of the benefactors of this of Hockey Fights Cancer this season, which is different from previous years. So that is always good news. And once again, George, thank you so much for coming on. Real quick, plug yourself where the people can find you on social media.
You can find me on social media on Twitter at NuffSen56. And you can also check out NovaCast, obviously, NovaCast.com, our Facebook page at NovaCast, our Twitter feed at Nova_Cast, and also on Instagram at Nova_Cast.
All right, well, with that, thank you so much, George, for coming on, and we'll definitely have you on again very soon.
Thank you, Michael and Bernie. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, George.
All right, with that, we'll be back after the break with some NWHL and NHL news when we come back. Looking for some pre-Thanksgiving fun.
All right, thanks, George. I will text you and let you know when the next time we'll have you on. It'll probably be like beginning of December or something like that.
Come see special guests like David Yost, Walter Jones, Todd Howard.
And then we'll also talk about the event on the 25th too, because as of right now, I don't have to work, so I might be able to make that trip down.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming out. If you're able to come out, appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
I'll be in touch, George.
Hockey fans, the Experience Hockey Talk is on Patreon. Come join the exclusive
Okay,
we should try to go to that.
I'm going to see what my schedule looks like. I don't think I'm going to WrestleCade, so that might be...
I'm not going to WrestleCade. I already told Shinblade to cancel my hotel reservation, which I didn't even ask him to give me anyways.
Oh, you're the one that you can't... you're the second hotel room. I saw the deal.
Yeah.
I didn't know who the second one was. That's pretty crazy. You doing Players of the Month first, or NWHL?
I'm going to start with NWHL. I need to get my notes back because it decided to shift it away from there.
Oops. NWHL.
You got the notes for the Players of the Month because I wasn't able to save those.
I know Stamkos and Kucherov were 1-2. I forget who 3 was.
Okay.
3 was 3 was Jaden Schwartz. AHL ratings that are Players of the Month.
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Experience Hockey Talk, serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. What did Shaggy say? The only that's worth noting is that the Whale is the best team in the league. Well, we say that on the show
Anya would
because
give
of
her,
Anya.
Anya would give him a big thumbs up.
Yeah, but great segue in, Shaggy. As last week was the opening weekend for the National Women's Hockey League, starting off with the 1:30 p.m. game from the Prudential Center as the doubleheader with the New Jersey Devils, the Metropolitan Riveters versus the Boston Pride, which saw the Metropolitan Riveters win 4-1 over the Boston Pride. Leading the scoring charge were Maya Dench and Harrison Brown, who each chipped in a goal and an assist in the first two periods, staking the Riveters to a 3-0 lead that they wouldn't relinquish. Alexa Grushko and Rebecca Russo also netted goals as the Rivs won their first game of the season for the first time in franchise history. Boston had their chances throughout, especially early on, but Katie Fitzgerald, last season's goaltender of the year winner, was on point all afternoon, stopping 30 out of 31 shots. Megan Mangine netted the only goal for the Boston Pride. And then going into Buffalo, you had, or going into Connecticut, you had the Buffalo Buttes versus the Connecticut Whale, which saw the Buffalo Buttes get an early, or a quick but a 3-0 lead, but late in the third period, the Connecticut Whale would get 2 goals to try to mount the comeback. The defending champions got the scoring start at 16:53 mark in the first period. Taylor Kersey deflected a shot past Whale goalie Sydney Rossman to give the Buttes a 1-0 lead. In the second, the Buttes scored again as Sarah Caruso and Kaylin Schroka connected with Sarah Shrub for the second goal of the game in the 12th minute of the period. And the pace and physicality of the game increased as time in the second period ticked to a close. I was able to listen in to this game while driving into work. It was very interesting to listen to this feed for this game. And then, however, early in the third, the Buttes would again expose Rossman as the Whale as Haley Skamora put away a pass from goal scorer Kersey and Maddie Ilya. Yet the lead for the defending champs would not last. Just over 11 minutes later, Grace Kleinbach got the first goal of the Whale season on her first of her professional career. The rookie from Newman College beat Buttes goalie Amanda Levalle. And then that goal led to another by veteran Sam Faber 10 seconds later, bringing the Whale within 1 goal with less than 8 minutes left in the game. However, the Buttes would shut down the Connecticut Whale 3-2, thus maintaining that, hey, they had a 3-goal lead, they almost lost it. And they always say nowadays, especially since that year-long lockout in hockey, the 3-goal lead is the hardest lead to keep.
Well, I'll give Grace a Kevin Weeks welcome to the National for her first professional goal. Yep. Quickly on the Chocolate Highway down in Hershey.
I have one more note.
They are starting to...
I have one more note.
You have another note.
I had one more note. And then,
third note is always the highest.
Yeah, the third note. And the third note was the NWHL Player of the Week is Maya Dench, who had the goal and assist in the Riveters game against the Boston Pride at the Prudential Center.
Well, it was great to see the Metropolitan Riveters be able to win that game, where all the press that was leading up to that, being a doubleheader and all that, being able to come through with a big 4-1 win. Yep. Down in Hersheytown, they're starting to get healthy.
Which is good.
Phoenix Copley had his first game of the season last night. Vanacek is starting to practice with the team, so the goaltending is starting to get straightened out. But Phoenix was rudely introduced to the 2017-2018 season. He gave up 6 goals in the second period. But Bears...
Welcome to hockey.
Yeah.
Hockey gives you goals.
Exactly. The Bears... Hey, NHL's up a half a goal a game in October, which is huge. They lost 7-6 in the shootout last night. Chris Bourque had a 5-point game, goal and 4 assists. And if you haven't heard this one before, Chris Bourque's tied for the league lead in points in the AHL. If he was signed to a 2-way deal instead of an AHL deal, I could only think that number 17 would be in red, white, and blue right now, helping the Capitals during their little stretch here, looking for some secondary scoring. But being on an AHL only deal, possibly. Representing the red, white, blue in a different capacity in February, but
and those jerseys are ugly.
That was ugly.
But Canada jerseys are just as bad.
But Hershey's 3-5-2. They're starting to get healthy. Like I said, I mean, both the Capitals and Hershey are going through some adversity they haven't seen in the last couple of years, and eventually they'll get to the point where hopefully everything will be, the ships will be righted on both Washington and Hershey, and we'll be having much more brighter things to talking about with both. And we had the NHL 3 Stars of the Month this week, led by a couple of Tampa Bay Lightning gentlemen. Mr. Steven Stamkos was the number 1 star. The playmaker. He's not the goal scorer. He's more of the playmaker. I think he 4 goals and 18 assists for 22 points. And Nikita Kucherov is the one pacing the Tampa Bay Lightning with 13 goals. And it's very impressive. And then the 3rd star of the month was one of the main reasons why the St. Louis Blues are thriving out of the gate with I think they had almost a 7-point lead in the division at one point last week. Jaden Schwartz, I think he had 9 goals and 8 assists and 17 points. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that is pretty darn good. And like we said, at this point last year, the NHL was a half a goal a game less than it is this year. So goal scoring is up, and that is good for regular season hockey.
Yep. And then we mentioned that tonight it's the Capitals versus the Boston Bruins. Also tonight you have the Connecticut Whale versus the Boston Pride at 7:30 p.m. in Boston. And then you also, as the Twitter game of the week at 7:30 p.m., the Metropolitan Riveters versus the Buffalo Buttes, live from Rochester, New York.
There you go.
So
the Americans.
You got 3 big games tonight. It's at 7 and 7:30 p.m. And actually also at 2 p.m. you have the Las Vegas Golden Knights versus the Ottawa Senators at 2 p.m.
Yeah, and Vegas has come back down to earth a little bit. We saw this coming with the 6-game Eastern road trip coming. Plus, but the thing we didn't see coming, Michael, is they're down to their 4th goalie already. Oscar Danks got hurt in the Islander game early.
They're down on their 4th-string goalie and an emergency call-up from Kamloops of the Canadian Hockey League.
One of their young prospects
Dylan
that they
Ferguson.
didn't think they would be dipping into quite so soon, but it's at least good that they have the emergency call-up rule where they can bring up an under 20 guy from the juniors in case of a dire emergency, which Vegas is in kind of right now. But George McPhee has come out and said that they are not looking to deal for a goaltender. They're going to ride it out until some of these guys start getting healthy. I think Subban's 2 weeks away from being possibly back.
And Marc-Andre Fleury is considered day-to-day.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean,
he's been considered day-to-day for at least a week now.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, you never want to see anyone get hurt with concussions. Marcus Johansson went out with a concussion. Vancouver's injuring everybody now. I should have mentioned that to George when we had him there. Him and Brock Besser were going for a 50-50 puck, and unfortunately he went headfirst into the boards. And so hopefully Marcus is out short term. We don't want to see anyone out long term with concussion symptoms. And like I said, the Wild Pacific Division, the LA Kings have been reborn. Dustin Brown has the fountain of youth going for him. He has 15 points. Anze Kopitar has 7 goals this season.
And honestly, talking about Anze Kopitar and Dustin Brown, I was talking. Anyone who listened to the Ted Starkey interview, Ted and I talked about it in depth. And one of the biggest things is that John Stevens has really opened it up for these guys. It's like, Dustin Brown is now playing first line. Is putting up first line numbers for a first line contract, whereas Daryl Sutter's been putting him down as like a 4th liner on a first line contract. So it's like John Stevens has really come in and really opened things up for these guys to play at their full potential. They're not being logged down with a massive defense first system now anymore.
Well, you see, and we mentioned the Pittsburgh Penguins and their the first 2 Stanley Cups they won with Sidney Crosby and Malkin were as a result of coaching changes, because at the times both coaching changes were made, they were out of the playoff picture.
Yep. And
a fresh set of eyes with a more aggressive outlook can do a world of good for a team. Look at Calgary last year. Once they started figuring out what Glenn Gulletson wanted, I mean, you saw Goudreau and Monahan start taking off, and Matthew Tkachuk's development start going in a positive direction of more of a power forward than a third or fourth line guy getting 8 minutes and stirring things up. So it's just a little thing. I mean, I mentioned Anze Kopitar. He had 7 goals already. His 7th goal last year wasn't scored until March 2nd. So, needless to say, like you mentioned, and very astutely, John Stevens has made a world of difference for that team. And as much as I love Barry Trotz and all, if this thing keeps going where these young guys aren't able to develop the way they need to develop, it might be time for a change in DC before the season ends.
Now, real quick, we got a little bit of time. So, hey, Dixon, turn your mic on.
Yes, sir. It is on.
All right, you're on. Good. Now we had made a comment about seeing Chris Bourque in the USA red, white, and blue, and I went, those jerseys are ugly.
Yes, and Shaggy and I.
And Shaggy even says that. And Shaggy put a note saying Nike needs to stop making jerseys. As our jersey expert on the show, what are your thoughts on the Team USA and Canada jerseys? 'Cause, wow. I think that
besides that ghost of Lindenbaum saying ugly.
Well, the USA ones are ugly, but I was looking at the Canada one and the white one. Tell me, take a look at that white jersey. I would actually know.
I've only seen the red one.
The red jersey, doesn't that look like a
it looks like
Star Wars Star Cruiser?
It's the Millennium Falcon. They didn't want to put the leaf on there. They wanted the Millennium Falcon on the jerseys.
And what's Canada's fascination with black jerseys now? All of a sudden, you're Canada. You're red and white, not red, white, and black.
Well, I mean,
Canada,
the black is for the bruises
black
that they put on people. You know,
when to put bruises, make it blue and purple. I mean.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing that I can say is that Nike, the only thing they kept good with was Sweden. That's it. North Korea. I'm sorry. I'm going to say North Korea.
Wow, that went up in the air real quick.
No, but
well, it is Texas. So.
Well, South Korea's are pretty ugly. I mean, they put a teaser shot of all of the jerseys out. But still, the only one that actually looks how it's supposed to look is Sweden.
Yeah, and
that's it.
And I got to quote a tweet that I saw by Eric Wolschlager, who covers the Buffalo Buttes, when the Canada jerseys came out, and because somebody was like, "Man, that looks like the Millennium Falcon was put on the jersey in place of a leaf," and he goes, and then he quotes it by going, "Let's put the Millennium Falcon on these jerseys." Very next quote: "I have a really bad feeling about this." ...
Pretty much.
So, all right, you can turn your mic off now. Thank you, Dixon.
But you guys mentioned purple jerseys and all that. We talk about hockey fights cancer. I'm going to end with this, and then you guys can put a nice little bow on the show. And great class effort again by all 31 teams in the league. And the Washington Capitals surprised Dariush Nanin, 11-year-old student from Bethesda who was diagnosed with leukemia, and he was coming out to practice with his twin brother. And little did he know that Barry Trotz was going to surprise him by telling him that he was nominated for Make-A-Wish Foundation in this area. Nicholas Backstrom was very instrumental as a favorite player, and he was the one that dropped the puck at center ice between him and Tavares on Thursday night. So,
which, by the way, John Tavares looked very lost during that moment.
Yeah, but he hadn't been lost on the score sheet, that's for sure. But he also was able to ride to Zamboni and got interviewed by Joe B. and Locker between periods. So a very special night for Dariush. And we mentioned Kerry Frazier at the beat. We didn't mention by name, but one of the best referees in the NHL in my estimation. Of course, the best set of hair. He was recently diagnosed with what's called essential thrombocythemia, ET, it's what it's called. It's a chronic blood disorder. People can live. It's an incurable cancer, but people have been able to live normal lives for several years after being diagnosed. He was talking about on NHL Now the other day with EJ and them, and talked about how he just needs to monitor his platelets and his weight and various different symptoms and everything to make sure that he is on the right path to lengthening his life. He's 65, 7 kids, 10 grandkids. He's had a great life. He refereed in the greatest league in hockey, the NHL, for 30 years. And like you said, he didn't have to shave his hair for cancer or chemotherapy treatment. So that is a good thing. And us at THXT also send our heartfelt condolences to the family of Big Ben Butzbech. I might have butchered that name. A 33-year-old. He's like the GOAT of Nashville. And last September, he got hit with a puck, a slap shot puck to the head while he's walking on the ice during a charity hockey event, which kept him from being able to go to Nashville games. He would always be like the GOAT. Like I said, he was like the GOAT of Nashville. He'd be painting different designs on his belly and be able to get the crowd going. He'd be, I'd be too sexy and I know it. Would always be playing. He even proposed to his fiancée, wife. He left a wife and one son. Proposed to his wife, one of those TV timeout deals where he painted "Will you marry me" on his belly after she guessed that it was Big Ben. And Peter Laviolette had a very heartfelt message to the family. He and his best friend from the Philly area, they moved to Nashville, established Penalty Box Radio, very good listen podcast, and actually that stemmed into them getting their own radio show on 102.5 The Game in Nashville. So it's very, with us, with deep heart, with heavy hearts, we like to send our condolences to the Nashville Predators extended family on that one.
Yeah, and then real quick, next week we will be having Suds, the commissioner of the DCHL, on. It's that time of season again where we go over championship games in the DCHL.
Couldn't you had him on this week after a Capitals win over the Islanders? That would have been more fitting.
Oh, don't worry, we'll get the trolling when we do that next week. I mean, hey, we technically had George on a week after we played the Canucks, so. Yeah. But and then on November 18th, you'll have Bernie here in studio, me from DerpyCon in New Jersey, along with Russell Hartman. It'll be the three of us all show long. And then on November 25th, we have not decided what's going to happen. We do know that the WBGR studios will be closed for the holiday. We will have something more firmed up for everybody come the November 18th show, so everybody knows what we are doing. One way or the other, we are probably going to have a Facebook Live. Yeah, so stay tuned. We'll keep you posted on that. And of course, as always, ladies and gentlemen, that was not the Ghost of Michael Lindenbaum this time.
Thank God.
But as always, also join the TXHT Patreon community by going to patreon.com/TXHT_hockey. We have exclusive content this week. This past week's exclusive episode was with author and NHL analyst Ted Starkey, a great interview that actually went overtime in an hour and a half long interview. A lot of great stuff, and he will be back on, and we'll be doing NHL history talk with Ted Starkey. So with that, until next week, we will see you on the ice. Attention hockey fans looking for serious hockey talk? Then listen to the Experience Hockey Talk every Saturday at 11 a.m. on the WBGR Sports Network. Join Michael and Bernie as all right, everybody. Peace out. We'll see you next week.